Hello, I'm Norman Firth, and this is the second in a series of short videos. Last week we looked at the topics of attitude and mindset, and just to recap on that for a moment, we said that a bad attitude was generally caused by people who perceived that they had had bad experiences thrown at them. None of them were their fault, it was always someone else conspiring against them and so on. And so that inevitably they would develop a bad attitude and as a result a negative mindset, and we said that none of that was any good for someone who was trying to run a business. So to continue with that now, I want to look at the perceptions of it, because that's what we're dealing with. It's not necessarily true that it was someone else's fault. You've got to get round to accepting that some of it was in fact your own fault, and deal with the perception, because that becomes the reality to the person affected. So I want to move on now to compare the mental window that we said we all look through, and which if it becomes dirty it spoils our attitude, and compare that with a car windshield. Now clearly a car windshield gets dirty when you drive your car, and from time to time it becomes so dirty that it's unsafe to continue driving, so you have to pull up and clean it off so that you can then continue safely to see the way in front of you. Now if we look back at children, when they're first born, they all have a clean attitude, a clean mental window. There's no negativity whatsoever because they haven't had any experience of life at that time. And just to sort of put this in perspective, if we look at one of the first things that a child does, and that is to learn to walk. And of course they usually do it by pulling themselves up on a piece of furniture, and once they've got the balance and they think, right, I'm off now, they let go and they start to take their first tentative steps. Now inevitably they fall down, but what do? They don't blame somebody else or look down to see if mum had left a brick or something on the carpet that they tripped over. They just get up and try again. And this can go on for weeks. Okay, some children are very good and could learn within a matter of a day or two, but others it might take them weeks. But they still continue with this positive attitude until eventually they're successful, and then usually what you get is a big grin. And obviously the gleeful parents go and give them a big hug, and it's wonderful, the first really positive experience. Now, I want to go on now to dispel something that is a bit of a myth for some people. Some people actually believe that a child never has a negative experience or is exposed to any negativity at all until they leave home and go to school for the first time, where they're exposed to the behaviours and so on, perhaps criticism or bullying, if you can call it that at that age, by other children, or perhaps something that a teacher has criticised them from, bad behaviour or doing something wrong or whatever, and that's when it all starts. But of course the truth of the matter is that depending upon the mindset of the parents of the child and other family members who it is surrounded by in infancy, it can start at such an early age, because if all the child hears whilst he's sat in a pushchair or crawling about on the floor, if all he picks up in negative vibes from conversations like, oh, we'll never be able to afford a nice house or nice holidays or anything like that, things like that just don't happen to us, we'll have to make do, it's always somebody else who gets, the good things in life, and we're left to scrimp and scrape, and okay, the child doesn't recognise it, of course, but these things are picked up by the child's subconscious and stored for later on, and it helps to cloud the mindset even at that early age. On the other hand, alternatively, of course, if the child happens to be brought up in a home where the parents are very positive, they've got a real get up and go attitude to life, and all they talk about is what they expect to achieve in life, like good things, depending on how we all see good things, but if you like living the dream, or looking forward to more money, more possessions, big houses, cars and holidays and all that sort of thing, and a good home to build children, to bring children up in, rather. If they're exposed to that sort of an environment, then it's the start of building a positive mindset, and that's great. Now, as an ex-college lecturer, I have some experience of children with bad mindsets. We used to get lads mainly coming into college at 16 years old, and you might have 20 lads in a class, and 17 or 18 of them will probably be fine. You'd set them some work and discuss things with them, and they'd take part. They were interested in learning, and they'd ask questions and so on. And so you could see quite clearly that they were learning and developing. But these other 2 or 3 wouldn't enter into anything like this, and it was quite obvious that they would shut themselves off and just mutter under the breath sort of thing. And so obviously, as the teacher, you have to at some stage address this in a quiet moment and say, you know, you don't really seem to be taking part in what's going on. Is there a problem? And invariably the answer would be, well, what's the point? My dad says I'll never get a good job anyway, so what's the point in leaving school and going to college to learn more? Because it won't do me any good. It's just a waste of time. And no matter how you try to explain, they just wouldn't listen. So invariably, they more often than not, they would drop out, and you'd be left with the positive ones. And that's always sad. I mean, what chance have children got if the parents set them off with that sort of attitude? But again, probably the parents don't realise that what they're doing is having such a negative effect on the children, because it's de rigueur for them. It's just how life is. They don't see it any other way. Negativity is often compounded then when people go into the world of work and they work for a boss that they hate, they don't like the job, and so consequently the 9 to 5 for them becomes a real grind. It's just such a horrible existence. They become irritable, bad-tempered, they lose whatever aspirations they had when they first started out. But the trouble is, they get in a rut and they feel as though they're trapped there. They can't get out of it. And it's not until hopefully somebody, you know, sort of sits down and talks to them and said, look, this is obviously not doing you any good being trapped in this environment, and tries to point them to the way out, and that person accepts that there is an alternative way to earn a living, that hopefully if you can get them to go back to last week again, to get them to start mixing with positive people, to get rid of the naysayers out of their lives, and to try and, if you like, get the window leather out and start cleaning some of the grime off that mental window. And it's only when a chink of light comes through and they start to see that there are great possibilities in this world for everyone, that they start to, hopefully, to dream a little bit again in the first instance, and rekindle their aspirations and start looking forward to life and doing some planning. Hopefully they will set goals and plan to get towards them. But the first thing they've got to do is to accept that there is a problem. And as I say, you know, chanting these positive affirmations as suggested by Bob Proctor, it's a very simple thing, but a very powerful thing, and they've got to do all these sorts of things if they're going to turn their mind around and make themselves, if you like, fit to start on the road of perhaps being an entrepreneur or something like that, and lifting themselves out of the doldrums. I think that's as much as I want to say this week, and we'll pick the subject up again next time. Thank you for listening, and bye for now.